everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Adonis Cosplay. Today we are going to go over how to make Bakugou's gauntlets from My Hero Academia. So these things are pretty beastly over here, and I'm going to show you all the steps that you need to know on how to go from scratch to making these complete gauntlets in the back here. Alright, let's get started. Okay everybody, first thing that we're going to do is make a template for our gauntlets over here, and basically we're going to use the same shape all the way around. What it is going to be this little sort of like a rectangle, but it's curved on the edges shape. So what this is mine specifically, and you can adjust these measurements to fit your hands. Mine is 4.5 inches across the middle, 2 3/4 inches across the top here, and then it's 15 inches long. So that's how I did this one. And if you're wondering how do you go about cutting this and making it even and the same on both sides, get yourself a piece of paper, fold it in half one more time, and then simply draw that curved line right there, and bam, when you cut it open, you'll have an equal piece, an equal pattern all the way around. We're going to take this, we're going to transfer it to some 10mm foam, and you're going to cut out 4 of these long pieces, 4 of them, and you're going to cut out 3 half pieces. So that will end up looking something like this. Here are the pieces that I cut out of foam. I took my pattern, I laid it on that foam, traced it out, and then used a utility knife to cut out 4 of these. I know it's kind of hard to see on the white table here, but there are 4 of those right there. This is 10mm foam, and they're all roughly about the exact same shape and size, which is exactly what we need. Also, we went and cut out 3 half sizes. So this is basically just one of these cut in half. So if you wanted to do that, either trace an extra long one, cut it in half, or 3 half ones and cut those out. However that one works for you. These pieces of foam right here are enough for 1 gauntlet. So if you're doing both, you're going to need to double this. So this is enough for my other hand. I already have one kind of built back here, but this is what we need to start gluing together for that one hand. The next step in the process is to glue all of these pieces together, and we're going to do that by using some barge contact cement. Now this stuff is absolutely wonderful for foam. Basically how to use it: paint it on the surface that you'd like to connect, wait for it to dry or get a little bit tacky, then you can stick the 2 pieces together and it's going to be stuck forever. So we're going to connect all of these pieces. The 3 connect together, the 4 connect together, and then we'll connect the 3s and the 4s together at the end. So we'll watch how we do this one real quick, and we'll already have the base of our gauntlet. It's pretty fast, pretty easy. You just have to know how to pattern it out and how to get it done. Let's get gluing. Alright everybody, our glue has seemed to dry on this side. It's a little bit tacky, but you can touch it and it's not rubbing off on your fingers. So basically all we're going to do now is press these edges together. Now, what you could have done is during your pattern you could have made registration marks, which in hindsight may have been a little bit easier to do, but basically what that is on the pattern, it means marking areas, just making a little dot on each side, and then doing the same on the foam. That way when you're lining the pieces up, you know exactly where to put them together. So you could have done that, you could go back and do that if you want to. I'm just gonna eyeball it because we're gonna end up trimming the bottom anyway later. But what we're going to do is connect it from the fatter part at the top down to the skinnier part at the bottom. Now it's gonna have some curve, and I want you guys to try to work that foam with your hands just like this, and then we'll piece them all together and you'll see the end result. Alright, so I just pushed my first 2 pieces together. Now make sure on these seams that you really press the foam into each other. You want to get all of those seams filled. You don't want to have anything overlapping. Try your best to make these nice and smooth. If you need to, you can go over later with either a Dremel or some sort of sandpaper or a filler, but hopefully at this point you won't need to. We're not going to worry about that right now. Continue this for all of the other pieces, and then we'll get back once these are all put together. Alright everybody, so we have just finished gluing together our entire gauntlet piece. Pretty simple how that worked. It just all glued together each one of those seams, press them together nice and strong, make sure that there's no openings or cracks or anything like that. You should be good to go. This is basically the idea behind the gauntlet right there, and now we have to add all the details to make it that grenade shape. So what we're going to do first, or what I actually already did, was I trimmed off the bottom, so I made a nice and flat bottom piece for it to be right there. If you don't, then you'll have the way that the pieces were glued together be kind of jagged at the bottom, so I went ahead and just cut off about 1/4 of an inch at the bottom right there and made it nice and flat on the bottom total. Okay, the next step is to add the border that goes around the top and the sides of the gauntlet right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to mark off about 1 inch on the sides and around the bottom here. And then the rest is going to be about 1 3/4 inches on the top, but we have some extra that we have to cut off the top, which we'll worry about later. So for now, mark off 1 inch on the side and then 1 inch around the bottom ring right here. If you wanted to go ahead and cut out some 5mm EVA foam and glue that on there, you could do that as well, because that's going to be our next step. If you don't know how to get that exact shape or pattern, what I would suggest to do is get yourself some painter's tape, like so. Just tape over the area that you want covered, peel that tape off, and then that's the shape that you need for your pattern. So go ahead and do that. We'll take care of these edges, and then we'll get to that next step. Once you have all of your edges glued on, you might have some excess left over the top on the sides, or on the top right here. You can go ahead and take your X-Acto knife and just cut those right off. And you want this top piece, well for mine anyway, it's going to be 1.5 inches from the bottom to that line that we're cutting off here. So I have a lot of extra on the underside. We're going to trim that one and make sure it's nice and flat on the top, just like we did with the bottom. Alright, so we cut off the excess trim on the top and on this part right here, and we're going to go back over and sand that later with a Dremel or a rotary tool, just to kind of smooth things out. But now we're going to get onto the actual grenade pieces on the front and the back of the gauntlet. And to do that, we're going to split it in half. So you can see I marked from the edge of the trim all the way down, about 1 inch away from that seam on both sides. So we split it front and back. Now, we're going to cover one side. We'll start with the front because it'll be a little bit easier, then you'll repeat the process on the back. We'll cover this whole thing with painter's tape. We're going to divide it into 4 sections, 4 columns, and then 2 rows. And then that will be our patterns. We'll cut those out, we'll take it off. That'll be our pattern for the actual grenade pieces. Once we get that done, we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. Just a little bit more painter's tape and more pattern, and it'll be pretty easy. But once you have a pattern, you can put it on the foam, glue the foam right onto the body here. Alright guys, we got our front piece taped and marked off. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to peel all this tape off. We're actually going to put it on a piece of paper, and the reason that we're going to do that one is put it down, cut it out, and then we're going to use the back side as our template. So the back side of these is what we're going to use to cut out and make our foam pieces. We pulled the tape off and we put it onto some just regular printer paper, and then what we did was we wrote the same number on the back. So this is the tape side, this is the paper side. So what you're going to do is you're going to lay the tape side down, keep the paper side up, and then that's what we're going to trace. And the reason is because when we cut it out, we'll have to angle it, and we'll see this later, but the angle is going to mean that this is the top, which is the front from here. It'll all work out, so trust me on this one. This side goes down, we're going to cut out each one of these in both 5 and 10mm foam, and then we're going to glue those together. If you want, you can go ahead and trace it on there, and then glue the foam together before you cut it out. That'll get you some cleaner edges, and I'll show you guys how to do that one next. But we're going to do that for all 8 of these pieces. Alright everybody, we have our pieces glued together just like this, and what we're going to do now is we're going to cut this out with a bevel to keep that bent in edge, that angled edge on the sides. So what you're going to do is, instead of just cutting straight, you're going to tilt your knife at about a 45-degree angle when you cut, and just cut all the way through that line the exact same way all the way around. Just make 4 regular cuts, but instead of straight, hold at an angle. Do this for all of them, and then we'll be ready to glue them onto our grenade. Alright, the next step is to take the pieces that we cut out, match them up, and we're just going to glue them on each section of the gauntlet as such. So I have my number here, it's going to match that one, glue it right on, and you'll be able to go that way. If for whatever reason they don't match, you can always trim some of this or sand it down, and then it should fit right inside that symbol that you guys created on your gauntlet. So hopefully they'll match up perfectly and you won't have any issues, and you'll be good to go to move on to the back side. So we're going to do this for the entire front, and I'm going to repeat the process for the back. Alright everybody, you should be at this point. We have pretty much basically completed our gauntlet on the outside. So all of this stuff is done. You glued on all of your pieces. It looks pretty darn solid all the way around. It's gained some weight, gained some structure to it, and now we're going to add the next piece, which is our first hand little thing your hand goes through here. So we're going to do that one. Basically what you're going to do is we're going to measure the diameter of this circle, which I believe is about 9¼ inches on both of these, and it'll be about 1 inch down on the inside, 1 inch underneath this lip right here. We're going to cut a piece out of foam, cut a circle that our hand can fit through, and then we're going to glue it in. Pretty simple. And on the bottom side, we're going to do something similar. It'll be a little lip. So this lip will angle in like this, and then your hand can go in that way. And that's it. That's pretty much the entire gauntlet, except for our big pike thing on the end, and we'll get that last. But go ahead and do this one first. Oh. Go ahead and do this one first, and then we'll make the pattern for the back side, and we can glue those on. Alright everyone, so we're currently working on the bottom piece of the gauntlet right here, the one where you put your arm through and it goes up to your forearm. Now this piece was pretty tricky to figure out. Basically it looks like this. Fold it in half. And this looks really simple, but I'm going to show you a close-up of how I did this and how it's going to work. We're going to make it an angled cone, which is pretty tough. This right here, we'll go over some dimensions and things, but this little opening is when you open up your pattern. This will be as big as your forearm, so that you can measure to yourself, and this will end up being this exact size of this ring. So I'm going to show you how this one looks and how I figured this one out, and then we're going to transfer it to foam and cut it out and glue it onto our gauntlet here. Alright, so essentially what this is it's a circle that I cut out and folded in half. It's about the same diameter as the bottom of your gauntlet, so if that's how you wanted to think about it. Folded that piece of paper in half, cut it out, and then you can see where I cut a little bit of a triangle out of. Try to make this about the same, so once your paper's folded, cut this triangle out, and when you open it, mine's taped back together, but when you open it, it'll be a cone. And that's the shape that we're going for on the bottom of our gauntlet. But again, try to match this up so you're cutting out this piece, and then you can tape that together, cut out the middle part, and that's your pattern. Let's cut it out of some foam next. Alright, so we have our pattern transferred onto our foam, and I have one for each gauntlet. Now when you guys are doing this one, we're going to actually angle the outside edge here, and by that I mean tilt it in. So you want to cut inward towards the edge, and hopefully that makes sense. Not cutting this way, cutting this way. You can do the same cutting in towards the inside edge if you want to make it taper off right against your arm, which I might do. It's not necessary, you could always sand that later, but definitely cut this one and that'll line up better with your gauntlet. So angle those, keep these nice and straight, because these have to match up to each other, and those can just glue right together just like that. So let's get these cut out.